Hey, I'm Cole Phillips, and welcome to the Connect podcast. I'm excited today because we're going to be talking about everybody's favorite topic. We're going to be talking about money. And what I've learned in church is that when you start talking about money, people act very funny.
That's right.
But money is such an important part of our lives. It affects our relationships. It affects our stress levels. It affects our future. And also our generosity. So it's interesting that people feel nervous when it comes to talking about money, like one of those taboo topics. But what we're going to do today is we're going to have an honest and a practical and a biblical conversation about how we manage our money and about how we can take steps to become debt free, and also how we do this in a way that honors God. And so I'm really excited today because I've asked my good friend, Bryan Peters, to join me for this conversation. And Bryan, he actually leads our Financial Peace University class along with his wife, Shepherd. And he's not only studied these principles, but he is a living example of these principles. And so I'm excited, Bryan, to have you here with us.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to be here with you. Thanks for bringing me on.
Yeah, this is going to be good. This is going to be good. So Bryan, how did you end up getting an interest really in this area of finances and money?
I think probably like everyone else, out of frustration, does need. Back in college is when I started listening to Ramsey. And I think coming from my family growing up, I grew up about as average as it gets. My mom was a teacher, dad was a cable guy.
Wow.
Grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, and it was just like the average American house. A lot of things were financed. Parents were stressed out very frequently about that. And I'm so grateful for them and all the sacrifices that they made with the knowledge that they had. And they're doing well today, but there was a lot of times where I could tell they were, my dad always makes a joke about back when checks were written.
Checks, what are those?
Yeah, exactly. We actually, Shepherd and I just had to write a check recently, but he would write a check knowing he gets paid on Friday. They go grocery shopping on a Wednesday, Thursday, and just hope and pray that the check isn't cashed until Friday. Wow. And which I guess people can't really do that anymore with instant transactions.
So true.
But that was kind of the background. And I remember thinking, like, being terrified to grow up. I'm like, that's like what adulthood's like.
Yeah.
And
that's good. Yeah. Think about the insecurities that produces. I think about my situation with my mom. My parents worked at General Motors, and every year there was a thing about, are we going to get laid off? Are we going to go on strike? And what are we going to do, if that happens? And so I imagine there's some things in there that it produces in terms of just insecurity about money, right, in our lives.
Yeah, and Shepherd grew up in a much more financially insecure household. Same thing, strikes and whatnot.
And, I think one of the things we try to do is keep up with the Joneses, keep up with people. So we spend money that we don't have to impress people
we don't even like.
We don't like. We buy things we don't need.
Yeah.
And it's where I think we get some identity, and we have identity issues. Of course, we've been talking about that in church and about how, our identity is defined by who we are in Christ, how God sees us, and not in the things that we own, not in the cars that we drive or the neighborhood we live in or anything like that. And so often we will, like when we moved to this area, I was intentional about not being house poor. Like I didn't want to just have a nice house, but not have any other money. And so we kind of bought a level under where we thought we wanted, but so what do you think is the main source of the financial problems that people have?
I think it is exactly what you just said, keeping up with the Joneses, but in a new era. Like keeping up with the Joneses used to mean your car or whatnot. Now it's like a burrito. Now it's like I want to eat it. I don't want to learn how to cook, or I don't want to, I want to go to the out-of-state school for college. And it's very much this instant gratification microwave culture that we've kind of construed, and it's unfortunately really like plaguing, I think, my generation, younger generations, but even our parents. Our parents just unfortunately stick with it because it's the same decisions they made in a different era of, like where before they would buy the car because the Joneses had the car, or they would send their kid to that private school or on that travel baseball team because the Joneses had their kid on that travel baseball team. And nowadays it looks like, I need to have the $1,000 baby shaker thing that I never have to wake up to take care of the baby anymore.
Yeah.
Or there's some amazing things that are out right now, but everything is financed. I mean, the other day I went to buy something it was like $10. I think it was a t-shirt or something online. They said you can do this in 4 payments. I'm like, if I can't afford
Klarna or something.
Yeah, I think it's Klarna
like
or what is the other one? Just pay over time stuff now. And people get excited because it's like interest free. Why wouldn't I? It's only $2.50, but they count on the 20% or whatever it is that don't pay that. And even if you can afford that, the problem is if you make that decision 10 times in a month, you now owe someone money every month for the next 4 months or every month. And that's where people have no buying power. I really got interested in what makes a successful marriage, because Shepard and I at the time were pretty serious at that point. We'd been dating for about 2 years, and this is before I was on a huge faith journey at the time. But I remember just getting really serious about what makes relationships work long term. And I read that the number one reason for divorce is finances. That's the number one reason that people get divorced. And it often causes other issues. So even if a divorce happens because of infidelity or something like that, often the reason someone gives for that is we were arguing a lot over finances. And then I felt, so I was like, if I can knock out the controllables, I know I can stay faithful.
Come on, that's good.
Then, let me focus on this. And so that kind of gave me the interest in finances.
And you mentioned something about parents, and we've talked about that, but I think there's this idea sometimes that our parents had certain things that we expect we're going to have that immediately, perhaps maybe not do what is necessary in order to have what they have.
So true. I mean, how many people grew up in a nice home and then they think their first home needs to be their parents' home they bought when they're 40? Yeah, that's so frequent now.
Yeah,
totally.
Well, let me hear a little bit more about your story. And you were talking about how you grew up, but then let's say you entered into adulthood. What was your financial situation like at that point?
So, I mean, I was in college, so it didn't have any money, but I actually had less money than when I was in high school because I could work more in high school. But I remember in the summer going into my sophomore year of college, I got my first like real job. I don't know why they hired me, but I was working at a movie theater, and I was like, you know what, I want to get into sales because I'd always win the rewards card sign up competition, at the movie theater. So I ended up, getting this job at a company in Chicago. And that was the first time I remember in my life seeing more than $2,000 in my bank account.
Wow.
And I made $8,000 that summer, and it all went to food. I lost I mean, by the time fall hit, I was right back to where I was that last spring or fall at college, just like, trying to get money for the weekend sort of thing. So
did you end up in debt?
I never went crazy into debt. So I got a credit card, I think that same year, because I thought that's what you were supposed to do. And then luckily that fall I started listening to Ramsey. So I never went too into debt on the credit card. I used to just be nervous if I had any bill due, which kind of helped me, I think, long term. But I was in a lot of student loan debt at the time. At the college I was going to was a private college. I got a scholarship, fortunately, for baseball, but it was Division III, so they give you an academic scholarship. So they couldn't take it away when I hurt my shoulder. But when we graduated, I think Shepard and I had $53K in student loan debt. So certainly not like a lot of people are 6 figures in debt, but
wow, 53 sounds like a lot.
It was still a lot, yeah, and it was. Yeah. And at that point, now we had listened to Ramsey, so we couldn't be ignorant.
Well, I remember when I was turned, 17, 18 years old, and a department store called Dillard's sent me a credit card with $200 credit limit. And I thought, they're so dumb. I cannot believe they just gave me this money. That's amazing. And I went right to Dillard's and I bought a turntable, like a record player.
Oh, I love it.
And so, yeah, they will start, like, if you talk about being a young adult, like they will start immediately targeting you. And then you get the bad advice from people, parents even, who say, well, you need to start building up your credit, meaning get into debt, use that credit card. Oh, yeah. Right. And you're a target, and they send you just massive amounts, of these credit offers, and you think, wow, they must really think I'm about to make a lot of money or something.
Yeah,
right? They think I'm going to make a lot of money off of you.
Yeah, exactly. They make you feel like your friend. I mean, it's interesting when you look at when credit card offers are sent out. Actually, the highest number of credit card offers you will get is if you ever file for bankruptcy. And I that just tells you exactly where the industry is. It's like the predators come in when they can. But a funny story about kind of where I was financially and mindset wise before, thank God, before I had a credit card, because I would have probably went crazy in college with a credit card if I got it too early. But I remember freshman year not having any money, and we sat down at a restaurant. There was a few friends, and I ordered a lemonade to drink. So it was like $2 or whatever. I'm like, I should probably check my bank account and make sure I can order food. Well, so I check my bank account and I'm negative. I'm overdraft. And I'm like, I can't even afford the lemonade that I already ordered. So I remember having to make a few calls to see if someone would send me $5 just so I could be back to positive and afford the $2 lemonade. So that was kind of where I was mindset wise before I started getting serious about finances. And for Shepherd's sake, thank God that was the case, because I think I would have ruined our financial future.
So how long did it take you to get out of that $53,000 of debt?
It took us 2 years after graduation. 2 years.
That's pretty aggressive.
Yeah, a little less than 2 years, because it was March of 2024. So yeah, we got very aggressive. We spent more on our student loans than we did on rent at the time.
So what did you not do during that time in order to be able to put all that money toward it?
A lot of stuff. I think, we drove her car, which has 150,000 miles. My car is like 140,000. We just set up our finances in a really stable way. So we set an emergency fund across first. So we had $1,000, and we're renting. So like, for the most part, what would happen that's going to cost us more than $1,000 is 23-year-olds. Not much. Like something goes off on the car, that's usually 500 or something like that, which happened. Murphy happens. When things go wrong, everything goes wrong. But what we said more than yes, or we said no more than yes a lot. Friends wanting to go on trips. We didn't travel much other than going back up to Illinois, because we had moved down here to Texas, but we didn't fly. We would drive up there in our beat down cars and whatnot. And, we just, it's hard to answer, because I think we just made it work. It was like, it wasn't how we made it work. It was that we are going to make this work, and how will come to us as these situations arise, I think.
So what was the hardest part of it?
I think the hardest part was a year after the year you do graduate, it's like everyone's getting on their footing. So there's no comparison really happening. But I would say about a year later, it started being tough looking around, and all of our friends went up for homecoming and at college, and you would have like people are leasing the new car, or having whatever it is, but we were just so stuck in our morals that we're just like, or stuck in our values, that it didn't bother us too much. But that was hard. There was times where like, it would be nice if we just had a nicer car. It would be nice if we had the nicer apartment in the city instead of living out of the city and having to commute, things like that.
So when you paid that last payment, that last debt payment, what was that like?
Spiritual. So it's weird. You feel like, I actually felt like it was more spiritual than it was physical. It felt like we knew it was coming. We had like planned it out. Okay, we know in March we'll be debt free. We have it. But when you make that payment, it's like shackles coming off.
Wow.
It was truly, but like not physical shackles, other than like just this release in your chest. But it felt like we had gotten to the top of a mountain we had been climbing for so long, and it was just excitement, I think, for
Yeah.
the future.
Yeah. Some people feel like they've gotten into so much debt that they're like, okay, this is just going to be my life. And yeah, it's sort of a joke to think I'm going to be able to get my way out of this. I'm just going to have to live in it, manage it. But you are living testimony that this is possible. And I just want people to listening to just sit in that moment. If you are in debt, to go to imagine that moment of being free, being able to breathe, being able to say, hey, I'm no longer in bondage, right? That's amazing. I want to talk about your specific passion that you've said, you mentioned to me about young adults entering into the marketplace and into entering next steps in their life. And what are they financially? What are they thinking as they get into young adulthood?
I think they're not thinking. That's
Okay.
problem. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's the problem, is that we just fall into, and I have so much empathy for that, because literally that was me. I happened to be recommended the Ramsey podcast from my brother, and I'm just so grateful I started listening to it and really got into it because I had that interest in finance. But they're just not. I think most people just kind of fly by the seat of their pants in life, especially in younger people. And
Living paycheck to paycheck.
oh yeah, sometimes less, right? Like it's
right.
living paycheck to credit card for the next 3 days and then paycheck. And then they just assume one day I'm going to make enough money to out earn this and I'll be fine. And some people do, and that's great, if they make it in, in entertainment or something, but the vast majority of people don't. And if you design your life assuming something that you're not even working really hard to achieve is going to work out, then it's not a good setup.
And a lot of them probably feel hopeless because what we're told is you're never going to earn what your parents earned, right?
Yeah.
Are they told that? Is that true?
Yeah, well, everyone is told baby boomers had it super easy and we'll never have that. And so you can just wipe out any expectation or whatnot. What I would say to someone who has that mindset is, in order to have success in anything in life, whether it be personal, professional, spiritual, you have to be results driven and process oriented. So many people are like focused on process and don't have a result in mind, and you'll end up being complete. You'll phase out of that. If you only work on process but don't have an end goal in mind, you'll.
Okay, let's define process first. Yeah. What do you mean by process?
If you're results driven, you might say, I want to be, out of debt by this date. I want to be 30 and out of debt. That's a great result. Now, the process is where you orient your spirit, you orient everything toward that goal, that end goal. If you're just process oriented, like, I'm just going to get out of debt and I'm going to work on it this way, and you focus so much on how you're going to get out of debt but have no end in mind, you'll phase out, you'll run out of steam.
This sounds like the scripture that, where there's no vision, the people perish.
Exactly.
Like you've got to have a vision in mind.
Yes.
For your life, for your finances, for your marriage, all of it.
Totally. Vision comes first. Mm-hmm. Once you have the vision, then you align your process and you start making intentional process decisions instead of just, I saw a YouTube video where they said, if you take the arbitrage of this debt and then you put it in the S&P 500, and you see so many people doing that right now, it's scary, where they think they're being intentional, they think they're being smart, but they don't have an end goal. They just want to be rich, I guess, or they want to, you have to have an actual result in mind. So that would be the first thing that I would say. And then the other thing I would say is, as a young person, once you do have your results in mind, like I want to be 35 and own a house or whatever that is, you have to put blinders on. You have to it doesn't matter if your friends say, I can't even afford my car payment, because you're doing a different plan. Your plan is, I'm not even going to have a car payment. It doesn't matter if your friends are worried about going out and spending $200 every weekend. Well, you're not. And so you have to put blinders on to be focused on your goal. And it's okay if you decide you'd rather go out on the weekends, or you decide that you would rather buy a new car. Just don't be upset later when you don't have the house at 35, and don't blame the government or don't blame society. because it was ultimately a decision that you made. Every decision you make is a trade-off. You could have made another decision. And so I think it's important to have that vision at the beginning. Once you decide you have a clear vision where you want your marriage, where you want your life, where you want your success, how you want to live in retirement, then you can start making intentional decisions leading up to that.
Yeah. Yeah. It reminds me a lot of just, a diet in essence. You've got a goal, you've got a plan, you've got the plan, but then come the parties, then come the birthday parties and the holidays and all of the things that are like, okay, am I going to compromise on my path to the goal?
Yeah. Totally.
Totally. So did you bring some information you wanted to share with us about that?
Well, I wasn't sure how much.
Let's get into
how much you wanted to get into it, but I will try to keep it concise. But one of the things that whenever someone tells me, it is true, by the way, today, if you graduated, let's say in the class of 2025, you just graduated high school or you just graduated college, it is true that it's harder today to buy a home than it ever was in the history of the US. It is also true that we live in a very high inflation compared to maybe what your parents went through. I should say that may not be true, because if you graduated in 1980, so what I did is I went through history. I'm a history nut, and I was like, is there another decade in history where someone graduating maybe had it worse off or the same? So if you graduated in 1980, here's some numbers on that over that decade. So let me see if I can. Here, this is a good comparison right here. So the average household income at the start, so in 1970, was around $10,040. Okay, average household income for
income in 1970 was $10,000.
Isn't that crazy? I can't even imagine that now.
$10,000 a year.
$10,000, yeah, and $40. Don't forget the 40 at the end there. And then the average household income at the end of that decade had doubled a little bit, so it was $21,065 in 1980. So total income growth was 110%, but most of that was inflation. So inflation for that decade, it peaked at 13.5%, but average annual was 7.9%.
Well, when I was married in August 9th of 1991, our income for that year was $12,000. And we were both full-time students working several jobs. And we made $1,000 a month, essentially, was our income.
Wow.
So we were very, very poor. That was not what we should have been making, but it was what we survived on, what we made it on.
How did you make it work?
Well, on love. We lived on love. We were in an apartment. I think it was cost $399 a month, and it was all bills paid.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I can't even imagine that now. $300 for rent. So for the decade, the total decade inflation was 112.4%. The total income growth for that was 110%, I think it was. Yeah, 110%. So the real income growth when you factor in inflation was zero. In fact, it was actually a little bit negative. Interest rates for homes got up to I think the next year was 17% or something like that. So interest rates for homes were, I think it was 18.5% the next year. And then home prices, let me give you the actual home price index, because it's not just the interest rate on the home. Mortgage rates were 13 to 16%. Home price was 10.8% is what the average home price went up over that. Over that year, it was up 175.8%, the total home price growth.
So what is the bottom line on this? What does that mean that how it compares from someone who was entering young adulthood in the early 80s, which by all accounts, as I understand the 80s, is, pretty prosperous decade.
So bottom line is, if you graduated in 1980, everyone was, and you can find old articles, everyone was saying the same thing they're saying today. Was that if you're young, you're never going to be able to afford a home. Wages aren't even going up. Inflation was crazy. And you're not going to own a home. We're going to have to get used to renting. If it sounds familiar, it's because it is. It's the same thing we're hearing today. Meanwhile, today, Average home price growth over the last decade was 3.7 or was up 41%. And so let's talk in real income. So the home price to annual income in 1980 was 3.1 times, meaning that if you made whatever the average annual income was, a house cost about 3.1 times more than that. Today it's 3. So it's gone up 0.5% in real. Now, the real kicker is how much do you think debt has gone up since 1980? Average annual home income, non-mortgage debt. We'll take mortgages out of it.
I would imagine we have more debt today than we did back then.
Yeah.
We did?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
By a long shot.
Okay.
Let me see if I could find the numbers because I don't want to misquote it. But while I find the numbers, why don't you give a guess for how much you think?
Debt has risen by 35%.
Since way more.
Way more than that. Okay.
I think it's something like 1,000%.
Wow.
Yeah,
When I said 35% and it's 1,000%.
I should have had this way better formatted here.
That's okay. What I'd like to do is I would like to make that document available in the show notes so that people can download that and they can look through it, and then we'll get a good picture of what it is you're talking about. But let's say somebody wanted to take a step toward getting out of debt. What would you tell them is the very first step they should take?
I mean, like ground zero, stop, make the commitment. I'm done with debt.
Okay. So the way to get out of a hole first is to stop digging.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Yeah. If you're bleeding, let's stop the bleeding first, and then we can worry about repairing the cut. And then the next step would be to get an emergency fund, because the problem is, if you don't have an emergency fund, things will happen. The enemy attacks when you're the weakest. And so if you decide I'm going to get out of debt and don't put an emergency fund away, well, then the washer goes out, or then you have an issue with the car.
Yeah, but it seems like every time I try to have an emergency fund, I then have an emergency.
Then you have an emergency. Yeah. Well, thank God you had the fund. Okay. So then the idea of that is you then won't have to go into debt for an emergency to happen. And then from there, I don't know if you want to continue forward from there, but then I would start paying down the debt, smallest to largest. So then I would take, okay, I owe $200 on this credit card, pay that off first. And please bring out your book.
Yeah. So I have this in Formula 110 that you can actually order on Amazon if you want, but it is the idea. There's a plan in here that will help you with organizing that, and we call it the momentum method, and it's gathering momentum as you go.
Yeah, it's like a snowball. Like if you roll a snowball down, maybe it's my Illinois reference. I know we're in Texas, so we don't see much snow.
We don't see snow around here.
So that's probably a better momentum.
Let's
method.
get it going.
That's right.
Acceleration.
It's easier to get a car going 50 to go 60 than 0 to 10.
Yeah,
is essentially the same comparison. So you start with the small debt and you get into the habit of paying that off. And then when that's paid off, so that $200 credit card that had a $40 minimum payment, well, now that's paid off, and that could be done probably in a month. Well, now you have an extra $40 on that minimum payment that you're putting toward the next highest debt, which may be another credit card, or maybe it's a car payment or something of that nature. You owe $5,000 left on your car. Well, then you start attacking that profusely with all spare income that you have. And then that car payment that was $500, once that's paid off, now you have $540 because you had the $40 before, $500 car payment to put toward your student loan debt or whatever that is. So you start building up this snowball or that momentum where you're really able to start making an impact quicker than, if you go the avalanche method, which is you're staring down $40,000 in student loan debt, and the avalanche method, by the way, is like doing the highest first or the highest interest rate first.
It's just going to take you a lot longer to get to have some wins. Like you want to celebrate some wins, and wins give you that momentum so that you can feel good about, hey, I'm attacking the next one. I'm attacking the next one. But how about this word? It's kind of a dirty word, but it's the word budget. I think they say, how do you spell relief? BUDGET, right?
Yeah.
Why is that important? Why is a budget so important?
Well, going back to like what what I shared at the beginning of being results or results driven, goal oriented, or process oriented. How would you know what spare income you have to put toward that if you don't even know where all your income is going? And so if you don't do a budget, the budget's like the foundational habit that you have to do in order to make all of this work and be intentional. Because if you are, one of the things I always like to say is, if you don't tell your money where to go, you'll wonder where it went. Right.
That's good.
And I think that's probably a Ramsey quote, to be
No,
honest.
that's totally you.
Yeah.
Totally you.
Yeah. I'll take credit for it. But when you wonder, I promise you won't like where it ended up, because it'll probably be at a restaurant if you're me, or it'll be, on Amazon or whatever if you're my wife. But you have to know how much money you're spending, and then you're able to be intentional about where it's going. Maybe I won't eat out as much this month, or at all this month, when you're getting out of debt. And you're able to then assign a budget item and say, okay, I know for sure this is how much I'm getting paid, so I'm going to put this much toward our debt. And so when I told you earlier, we knew we were getting out of debt in March, it's because we were budgeting. It's because we knew exactly how much debt we owe, how much the interest rate is, and how much we needed to put toward it to be paid off by that time.
Well, let's talk about credit card usage.
Yeah.
Okay. What should we do about that? Like, is it okay to use credit cards, or just
what about
off
the
limits?
Points? The points.
Right,
I got a free trip out of it. I mean, like I said earlier, you could, I mean, technically, mathematically, you could use a credit card, pay it off every month, never pay interest, get the points, and maybe every 2 years you get a free plane ticket out of it. No one ever does that. That's why they go to any city in the United States. What is one of the biggest, nicest buildings? It's a bank or an insurance company. Why is that? Because do you think it's because they're giving you all the,
they're making the money,
they're
right?
making money. Yeah. And it's the most marketed product of all time. And the problem is that people do overspend. And so it's not being taken out of your bank account. It's just this plastic card that you wave around everywhere, and it's a bill you pay at the end of the month. And it's great until you have an emergency come up, and now all of a sudden, you can't afford that bill this month. But it's okay, because I can make the minimum payment and I'll just pay the interest once.
And cash feels real. Like when you spend cash, you feel it. You're taking it out of your wallet. It hurts almost to spend the cash. But that'll keep you in check, in a sense that you're not just doing the impulse buying, right? But there are even places now, that don't take cash, so you're almost obligated to tap.
Yeah.
And so
it's funny. I think there is a generational shift on that, because definitely in your generation, it's cash is king, and now the debit cards and everything. Yeah. Honestly, when I get cash, like if it's a birthday card or something like that, it feels like Monopoly money to me. I'm just like handing it out. I know I'm the finance guy, but it feels weird. What I care about is that number on the bank account.
Yeah, I feel you on that. But normally I don't even have cash. So
me either. Yeah, I never have it around.
Yeah. So how about expenses that we have that we think are necessities, but they're actually the luxuries? They're actually the comforts.
Yeah.
Can you think of some things like that?
Like cutting expenses on your budget.
Yeah. But how many of those things do we have? I'm thinking particularly of, I think one of the big ones today is so crazy. So my cable journey is like, we cut cable. I don't know. It's been so long ago. It was like 20 years ago almost that we cut out cable. Yeah. Because, it's so expensive and yeah, you're just paying for that. And it was expensive, but then over time, now we've accumulated, it seems like every streaming service has its own fee, and those things add up. Now it might be that we're paying more in streaming services than we did in cable.
Yeah. It's like a la carte. The way that I would advise somebody on expenses and cutting those and everything is go for the big ones first. So sometimes people will be like penny pinchers, but then they'll like buy a new car, and it's like, doesn't matter how many pennies you pinch, that's $500 a month. So go for the big ones first, cut those expenses. So if you're spending $1,000 at restaurants every month, you don't need to be inside a restaurant unless you're working there if you're getting out of debt. you can cook at home. And I understand people have very mobile lifestyles and you may run to McDonald's or whatever.
But it's so expensive now. It's
So
crazy.
yeah, what happened to the dollar menu? Now it's like the $5 menu
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So, and it just costs so much more money now for sure with inflation. But yeah, so to answer your question, expenses, I would cut the big ones first and then start cutting back on lifestyle. Like money, it's a math equation. We attach emotion to it, but there is no emotion. Either you have the money or you don't have the money. And so you have to make values judgments on what you're willing to cut out of your life. And, there's a lot of different psychological things that you can go through on how to do that. But the one thing that has helped me a lot when I'm thinking about buying something or when I'm thinking about increasing an expense is, if nobody ever saw this thing, would I still buy it?
That's so good. Now, what a good, like, motivational question.
Yeah.
I love that. How much is it that we're buying because we want somebody to see it?
Totally.
And we spend a lot of extra money on things, especially if it's name brands, maybe it's sunglasses or something along those lines.
I'll tell you another thing so quickly is, and maybe this is just a personal thing, but video games. My generation loves video games. Guys, every male friend I have plays so many video games. $60 every time they buy a video game. I had this thing where I'm like, until Shepard is not having to work, she won't see me playing a video game. Because why am I spending time at home, doing that, spending a bunch of money and spending all of the time that I could be earning other money? Now that may sound harsh, but
I think, I think we need to shift on our conversation to that. Then we need to shift to marriage.
Yeah.
Because you were talking about that, and you're exactly right. So many young adults, and even as they're getting into their 30s now, have this whole video game thing. And it's like, it's crazy to me because again, like, you need to man up and spend time with your wife, because that'll eat up so much time. Like, it's crazy. I'm not a big video game person, obviously, but if I have a certain game, I remember, I'm not even tell you what the games were because they just think it's so cheesy. But yeah,
Pong
Pong, once you start getting good at it, it's going to take you hours.
Oh yeah.
It's going to eat up hours. And I'm sorry. I know it's just old man yells at cloud, but
me too.
What are you accomplishing? Like, you're sitting and you're playing, it's different to me. It's different if you're going outside, you're doing something physical, or, anything that's going to not just eat up your time. But there are a few, I guess, again, positive side,
there is.
Some people are making some money off of it or something,
Twitch
streaming.
Streamers and yeah.
Totally. But you're not. So stop. Cut it out. Cut that out. So how about in marriage? You've always got the person where one person is the saver and one person is the spender, right? Totally. Opposites attract, and then opposites attack.
Yeah.
And so that's a challenge. It's also a challenge sometimes because people say, I'm going to have my money, you have your money, and I'll take care of these bills, you take care of those bills. What would you say to someone like that?
A lot of things there. So first of all, if you're married, you should be combining your finances.
Okay. It's our money.
It's our money.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Your pronouns changed, and not in the way that our society has changed pronouns.
Gotcha.
But everything is we are.
Yeah.
It's our money. It doesn't
and
matter.
The expenses too we're buying this, right?
Yeah, totally. Now, again, Shepard might say, this is my ice cream.
Yeah.
And I'll still eat it, but it's our bill or our mortgage. But it really comes down to, again, honestly, the theme of this conversation is values. Like, what do you value? Like, going back to the video game conversation, it's like, I hear so many couples that, will be like, yeah, we spend a lot of quality time together, where I'll play a video game, she'll read a book, or that's not quality time.
No.
That's, quality time is being present with each other.
Come on.
And it's a habit that you have to develop. And this, I always say, financial problems are a symptom. They're usually a symptom of a values problem. And so finances in short is intentional decisions you make based on your values. But most people aren't even assessing their values and making intentional decisions. So when it comes to marriage, Everything is we now, because your values are we're married, we're now one, and we do things together, and we align our life and our future together. And when you start doing that, then you start making different decisions about how you spend your time. You start making decisions, of course, about how you spend your money. And so hopefully that answers your question. But
Yeah, I think you think about it like this is our family business,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
so we're going to have honest discussions about this. We're going to have to not keep financial secrets
yeah.
from each other. We're going to have grace for each other when someone makes a financial mistake, you know, and also I think you celebrate, right? You're going to celebrate the wins as a couple so that you have that momentum to go on.
And you do need individuality, like on your budget. Shepherd has her own budget item. It shouldn't be like every single time. I don't think Shepherd has to ask me every time
No,
she swipes the
so
debit
you're
card.
saying like there's your spending money, her spending money.
Yes.
That's okay.
Yeah,
You
that's
have
okay.
that, but you kind of know what that's going to be, and you've agreed on it
And it's from the same account.
together.
Yeah, there's no secrets in marriage, and financially or otherwise.
Okay, that's really good. That's really good. How about shifting the conversation now to sort of a Christian perspective on money and biblical, because that was something, and I'd like to hear just really quickly from you about your step of faith and coming into the church, coming to Christ. What happened in your life with that?
There's so much. I'll
Yeah.
try to keep it short, but it's interesting because I got into finances first before I had this step of faith. So I had all these biblical values without this recognizing the source as the Bible. And ultimately, like, my story is what happened. My grandpa died. So Shepherd and I got married because I had the value that you shouldn't live with someone you're not married to. So, even though I wasn't super Christian at that
Wow.
point,
Man, there's even Christians who wrestle with that.
Yeah,
So that's amazing. That's
because
awesome.
again, remember, the source of why I wanted to get into finances was that I did not want to I wanted our marriage to work. And so I was like, what are the highest performing marriages? Well, it just so happens that they're Christian values based marriages. And so, long story short, grandpa passed away, and then I started getting really into I was just being intellectually honest. I felt like I saw so many people talk about their truth and all these things that I was just like, no, I think 2 + 2 = 4. And
Yeah,
you can think it
come
equals
on.
5, but that's your perspective. That's not your truth. There's one truth.
Yeah.
And so I started, reading a lot of books. I had to be convinced at the time, and kind of had this path back toward Christianity. Is the very short of there's a lot of things in there, but for sake of time, I'll keep it that short.
And so then you're transferring ownership of money from myself to God, understanding God is the owner and we're the managers, we're the stewards, and it really changes the whole perspective, because
Totally
our source of
changes it.
trust is not in our money we trust, but in God we trust first, right?
That is such a radical shift in mindset, and it changes your line. It makes it easier when your friends are going out, because it's not your money anyways. So God doesn't want me to spend his money that way.
Yeah.
I'm just his manager.
That's so good. So all of it belongs to God. So if I'm trying to get out of debt, then what do I do when it comes to giving, generosity, offerings, tithes, all of that? How do those play in together, do you think?
Well, I remember a sermon you gave, I don't know, maybe a year ago at this point. I loved it was that the harder you grip, your hand's not open.
So you live open-handedly so that God can pour more in. We are a river. We're meant to be a river, not a reservoir. Mm-hmm. So if it's stagnant, then it just kind of begins to stink and it's not going anywhere. But when we start living open-handedly, and yet, you know where that money's going and you want to invest it in some things. We talk about return on investment, but God's kingdom and lives is an opportunity for us to invest in something that really makes all the difference. And so one of the things we're doing at the Connection Church this summer, we do this every summer. We call it the Awe-Summer Offering. And this summer, it's going to be on August the 2nd. And so what it is it's just celebrating all the lives that are being changed and pouring into the future and the mission, the vision of the Connection Church. So, like this summer, right now, as you're listening to this podcast, I'm going to be in New York City. We're going on a mission trip to New York, and we're going to be reaching out to the kids there through block parties and meeting needs, giving them some just basic needs. And we've got a lot of things going on in the summer at the Connection Church. We don't slow down; we ramp it up. And so yeah, that's the all summer offering. But Bryan, you are leading our Financial Peace University. Tell me about how that went this past time and what happened as a result.
So amazing. There were so many different just wins. I think we had 40 people there at the beginning. It's a 9-week course, so people commit to it. There's so much community there. We're actually going to be doing a reunion for that group here.
Oh, that's cool.
In a couple of weeks, just to kind of make sure everyone's still on track. But just so much life change. I think we had like 75 credit cards cut up. We had over 100K in savings. There was a lot that happened during that, and so really excited for this fall to do it again, to have another class of people go through financial peace. And that's really what it is you now have a plan to become peaceful with your finances. And I want to say, if I can quickly, on the all summer offering, a fun story about giving, because as the financial nerd of Shepherds of Free Spirit, I'm the nerd. It was hard to be like, how do I budget giving? And things were not going well at work for me. For a while, I had like 6 months with this new job. I work in sales, hadn't done a sale the entire time I'd been there. It was looking like they might even let me go. And this is going into August a couple of years ago, and I was like, you know what? I think I need to give. And I gave, it wasn't a tithe. It was like $200, I think, that I budgeted that month to give. And not even a week after I gave, I had some crazy thing happen at work where this deal came through that I didn't really see coming or even do much work for. And and the floodgates opened. I think from there I went from billing $0 to 170 or 187K between there and the end of the year from August. Just things opened up, like that sermon about kind of opening my hand. Finally, God could bless it and come through. And since we started tithing, there's just been incredible additional things that have come from there. But one of my favorite quotes about heaven is that you can't take anything with you.
Yeah.
But you can take other people.
Yeah, you can take other people and you can send it on ahead. And the way you do that is in people. So we say, people say give till it hurts. But the Bible says God loves a cheerful giver. Yeah. And so we say, no, keep giving past the hurt, give till it feels good. And the story you're telling about, hey, I gave and then I got this blessing. Now, we don't give in order to receive. That's a motive. That's a heart issue. But I have seen that happen countless times. So many times you can call it a coincidence, but I call it a God incidence, because it just happens over and over. When we are faithful and we're generous, God does some things, and you'll begin to see, and you'll begin to maybe notice some things you wouldn't even notice before. And it's not always financial, but many times it is. And sometimes it's in other ways that God will bless. So let's say somebody is listening and they feel like, I don't see a way out of the situation that I'm in. What would you tell them?
There is a way out. Yeah. How do you eat an elephant one bite at a time?
Oh, yeah.
There are some really, really scary, severe financial situations, being hundreds of K in debt, and they're scary. And when you're in moments of overwhelming emotion, facts are your friend. So it's actually helpful to then look at money, because money is it's math. Math is your friend at that point. It's just facts. I don't have as much money as I'm spending more money than I make. So how do I stop the bleeding? And I would highly recommend going to people. I'm happy to help anyone in that situation with advice, and go to your local church, talk to them. Obviously go to the Connection Church. I assume you're listening if locally, but just in general, I think it's really important to get right with God, pray about it, and there's always relief through him.
Yeah. So I love this, because you're talking about different things. You're talking about fear, you're talking about faith, you're talking about facts. And so we put our faith not in our feelings, but we put our faith in the facts, which is the truth. The word of God is truth. And you put your faith there, and those feelings will begin to follow. Yes. So faith is the opposite of fear, right? And so we need to have faith, believe that God can do anything, get him into your situation, get him up in the middle of that, and you'll begin to start seeing that change. And I would encourage you that if you're feeling that way, just begin to start taking small steps. Check out Financial Peace, and yeah, there's a little bit of an investment, but the payoff of that is so worth it. And I would encourage you, you have an opportunity to invest in a summer offering and see God do something miraculous in your life as well. You don't have to fix everything today, but you take the next step, and God will honor that in your life. So Bryan, thank you so much for joining me on this. It's been incredible, and I look forward. I hope we get to do this again. I think it's been so helpful for people. Yes. So thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you really soon. Have a great one.
Thanks for having me on.
You got it.